Factory fire in chemical mixing room. On September 5, 2012, workers at Om Shakti Fireworks Industries in Sivakasi, India, arrived for what seemed like an ordinary day. The facility, located in what locals called the fireworks capital of India, was one of hundreds of manufacturing operations in the region. Like many others, it operated without proper licensing or safety protocols. By 11 a.m., the temperature in the chemical mixing room had risen to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside this enclosed space, 12 workers, mostly women earning less than $4 per day, were manually mixing potassium chlorate and sulfur. These volatile compounds become dangerously unstable at high temperatures, a fact the workers had never been informed of. The facility lacked basic ventilation systems, allowing combustible dust to accumulate in the air. Static electricity from the workers' movements was the only spark needed. At 11:22 a.m., witnesses outside the building heard a sharp crack, followed by a much larger detonation. The initial explosion instantly killed the workers in the mixing room. Their bodies absorbed the full force of the blast wave, which reached temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The explosion ignited adjoining storage areas containing pre-made fireworks, creating a chain reaction. As the fire spread, it reached a room where 38 workers were assembling consumer fireworks by hand. The room had a single exit door, which became blocked by falling debris. The windows were barred with metal grates, a common anti-theft measure that now became a death trap. Workers pressed against the windows, visible to onlookers who had gathered outside. Many were still alive, breathing in toxic smoke from burning chemicals. The smoke contained potassium chlorate particles, which caused severe internal burns to their respiratory systems. Some workers managed to squeeze through gaps in the window bars, suffering deep lacerations in the process. Those who couldn't escape remained trapped as the room filled with smoke and flames. Autopsies later revealed that many victims died not from burns but from asphyxiation, their lungs destroyed by chemical smoke. First responders arrived 30 minutes after the initial explosion, by which time 40 people had already perished. The intense heat and ongoing secondary explosions prevented rescue teams from entering the building for several hours. Fatal workplace flash fire. On May 27, 1983, a converted barn on a remote farm near Benton, Tennessee, became the site of an industrial disaster. The facility, disguised as an agricultural operation, was actually an illegal fireworks manufacturing plant, specializing in M80s and M100s, devices legally classified as boom booms rather than fireworks due to their explosive power. An M80 contains approximately 3 grams of flash powder, equivalent to about 1/4 of a stick of dynamite. The more powerful M100s contain nearly twice that amount. The facility had stockpiled materials to produce over 50,000 of these devices. At 9:15 a.m., 11 workers were inside the barn handling the explosive materials. Most were local residents with no formal training in handling hazardous compounds. They worked at tables covered with flash powder, a mixture of potassium perchlorate, aluminum, and sulfur that ignites at the slightest spark. A 52-year-old supervisor was demonstrating how to pack the powder into cardboard tubes when static electricity from his clothing created a tiny spark. Witnesses outside the barn reported hearing a sound like a single balloon popping, followed immediately by a deafening roar. The initial spark ignited the powder on his table, which in turn detonated approximately 1,000 pounds of flash powder stored throughout the building. The explosion created a pressure wave that expanded at over 17,000 feet per second. The wooden barn disintegrated instantly. Splinters of wood became lethal projectiles, some found embedded in trees over 300 yards away. The shockwave liquefied the internal organs of everyone inside. Their lungs ruptured from the sudden pressure change, and the brain hemorrhaging occurred before they could process what was happening. 10 of the 11 workers died instantly, their bodies torn apart by the blast. Incredibly, one worker survived the initial explosion but suffered third-degree burns over 80% of his body. First responders found him walking in circles, in shock, his clothes blown completely off and his skin hanging in sheets. The explosion was so powerful that residents in Chattanooga, 20 miles away, reported hearing the blast and feeling their windows rattle. The crater where the barn once stood measured 38 feet across and 12 feet deep. Instant throat strike in backyard. On July 4, 2013, a 19-year-old father of 2 was celebrating Independence Day in the backyard of his Oklahoma home. He had invited family and friends for a barbecue and fireworks display. His wife and children were among those gathered on lawn chairs as darkness fell. He had purchased several consumer-grade fireworks, including a multi-shot aerial repeater commonly called a cake. These devices contain multiple tubes fused together to fire sequentially, launching colorful bursts into the sky in rapid succession. This particular cake contained 36 shots and was designed to create a finale-like display. At approximately 9:45 p.m., he set up the cake on a flat portion of his backyard. He lit the fuse and retreated to a safe distance. The first few shots launched normally, exploding in bright colors overhead. Then the firing sequence stopped unexpectedly. After waiting 30 seconds, he made the fatal decision to approach the device. This violated the most basic safety principle of firework. Never approach a lit firework, even if it appears to have malfunctioned. As his family watched, he bent over the cake to examine it. Inside the device, the fuse had not extinguished, but merely slowed. As his face came within inches of the tubes, the smoldering fuse reached the next charge. The aerial shell, a cylindrical projectile containing flash powder and color-producing chemicals, fired directly at him. The shell struck his throat at point-blank range with a velocity of approximately 200 feet per second. It did not explode on impact but continued into his neck. When it detonated a split second later, the explosion occurred inside his throat. The blast severed his carotid arteries and jugular vein instantly. It also fractured his cervical vertebrae and ruptured his trachea. Blood sprayed in an arc as he fell backward onto the lawn. His wife screamed and ran toward him, while others grabbed the children to shield their eyes. He remained conscious for approximately 20 seconds as blood filled his severed airway. Unable to breathe or speak, he locked eyes with his wife as she reached him, before losing consciousness from rapid blood loss.